Topic of today is venture building. As you know, venture builders are the new kids of the open innovation block. It's something that a lot of corporates are currently experimenting, but we still don't have so much history and background to say that the model works and how it might work and where it doesn't. We have some corporates that are started and in a certain way they are retreating from venture building. Some other are entering the scene. And so it's super important to try at this stage to get as much as more information and use cases in order to properly assess this new interesting tool. And to do so, today I have the pleasure to have as my guest Daniel Szabo. Daniel is the CEO of Korber Digital.
Hi, Alberto. Thanks for having me.
So, Daniel, I think it would be important just to provide our audience that, by the way, should already know you, because, again, you are one of my recurring guests, because you guys are doing a lot of interesting things that is important to keep track how things are evolving, also how the approach that your company is following has been changing over time, also to reflect the fact that the open innovation arena and all the tools that we are using are not models, but mostly are toolbox that need to be continually modified and changes and in order to try to make them work. And so it would be important to maybe to give a short wrap up in terms of who Korber is, what Korber does, and then specifically what does Korber Digital. That is a sort of the venture building engine of Korber.
Perfect. Thank you very much again for having me. So Korber AG is a mid-sized enterprise around 3 billion revenues, mainly historically coming from the area of providing industrial machinery equipment for various industries. The group has evolved over the last decade or so into a true technology player that is, on the one hand side, providing machinery equipment for the tobacco, pharma, and supply chain industry. And on the other hand side is also heavily invested in building digital solutions for enabling manufacturing or moving of goods. So Korber is also one of the top 15 largest software companies in Germany, mainly active in manufacturing execution systems for the pharma domain, and one of the largest warehouse management software provider globally. I had the newest kid on the block, which is the business area digital, which is focusing on two roles. On the one hand side, we're helping with transforming established businesses, providing capabilities, teams, and technologies, mainly around technologies that are more leading. So at the moment, for example, a big topic is generative AI. And on the other hand side, we are a venture studio, ultimately building future businesses for the group. We have at the moment around 450 people, 4 portfolio companies, 3 product companies, and 1 service companies. And all of them have in common, they use data, digital technology, AI to enable and optimize manufacturing in various industries. For companies, as I said, FactoryPal, which is a company that is optimizing machine line performance through AI. InspectifA is revolutionizing quality control in the pharma domain with GMP regulated software that is an add-on to machine equipment. Vaibe, which is bringing success psychology and gamification to blue-collar workers to drive engagement and this performance, mainly pick and pack in e-commerce. And then we have Dane Studios, which is a boutique AI consulting house that is helping all kind of companies and industries, on the one hand side, big on data literacy, data strategy, but also on building AI-driven products, and is acting for a large e-commerce player, for example, as their analytics team as a service to optimize pricing, digital marketing, and so forth. So we have like a big convolute of topics, and they all uniting. They use AI and serve ultimately customers in becoming more efficient, more productive. Yeah.
Yeah, you make 4 examples of ventures that Korber Digital and Korber spun out. So they are independent companies most of the time, if I'm not
Correct.
wrong. Beyond going maybe to describing a few of them or more into details, maybe probably interesting to understand which is the genesis process, how the company decided they want to do something in a specific area. Is decisions coming from the top, or substantially top-down process, or some ideas that are being generated internally and have been validated from the top, or maybe something that you see outside on the market and you see, oh, that might be interesting, so you bring it in and then you scale internally. How does it work? What is the genesis? Because what you've seen, there are different venture builders that substantially are building new things, but from different origination channels.
Yeah, very good question. So maybe let's try to structure the market and the system, the concepts that are there, and then explaining our concept, which is, from my eyes, what I know, rather unique. So venture studios typically coming from 2 areas. On the one hand side, more being from the venture capital side. So you think about tech stars and these kind of topics, where you say, hey, I invite people to join a program. I help them to find a business idea, to find co-founders, and then I finance the first phase, and then ultimately they run as venture capital finance companies. So I think the most famous one in Europe used to be Rocket Internet, but there's very interesting ones, especially around AI in Germany. There's a company called Merantix that is very active in basically inviting individuals to come up in a program with new business ideas and spin them out. So like kind of an accelerator kind of approach. So
this is the evolution of the old-fashioned accelerators. Yes,
exactly. So this is the dominant one that you find. And what we do it a little bit different. So our purpose is to build future businesses to sustain the cooperation in the group. So we have a very structured process where we constantly look for customer problems that are even existing and are not solved sufficiently today. Or we look mainly on what is changing in the universe, mainly driven through technology, regulation, or big movements like supply chain interruptions, and try to come up with new problems that will exist that are big enough that there could be a potential to solve and address them. And the third angle we look at is really in industry trends in our established business areas to look, okay, what is changing there, and where do we see an area of disruption or unsolved problems that are there that become more important. And then we basically work in a structured process with a combination of teams. So we use, let's say, champions out of our established businesses that we have in the group. We use our expert startup teams, some venture architects, designers who have the methodology and, let's say, the business model thinking. And we very often invite also external parties to join in this ideation phase. So we do this pre-competitively. So we invite also, maybe if you have some in your network, to join in this process. And ultimately what is created can be used by everyone, because the idea by itself is not worth so much. It's really about then the implementation. But with this, we try in a structured, typical tech company, corporate innovation / venture building process to vet through a lot of ideas and a lot of problems and identify the promising ones. Then what we do...
How many ideas are you vetting, and how many ideas?
Yeah, so we typically start with a very open funnel. So we go very wide in, typically with hunting zones. So we define areas for disruption. For example, imagine that 50% of your workforce is retiring. What implication has that for various industries? And then vet it through. So this could be a future state, future scenario. And then we basically create 100, 150 ideas per future state. And then we very quickly evaluate, okay, which problem is big, urgent, and relevant as a first vetting. And then we typically do around 10 ideas in a bootcamp setting. So typically a week of intensive work with very diverse mixed teams to evaluate those. And then we come up typically with around one idea per hunting zone where we think that could be promising and valuable. And then we are having end of the week, then around 5 to 10 ideas, depends a little bit. Some we drop on the way when we see there's no potential. And then we decide typically for free further ideas to do a deep dive, where we basically in the next step put a dedicated team on it to go through viability, desirability, and feasibility. Meaning, is this a relevant problem for a customer? Can you make money with this? And can this be technically done? And then we basically have, let's say, a 3 to 6 months process. Depends a little bit on how many rounds we take. And then if we still believe as a business unit, those are promising and valuable ideas, we put them up for a budget pitch. Budget pitch means long-term commitment to spin out the company. So create a new entity, hire a management team and a fully fledged team around this. So this is typically an investment of around 20 to 30 people. And a 2 to 3 year commitment is a minimum to get going, to set up an own company that is addressing the problem and is building a product around this. And this decision is made through what we call CEO Circle, which is the extended board, which is the 5 board members, plus the 5 business area CEOs, of which I'm one. And this is basically the group that is taking that decision, basically on a pitch deck, and sometimes some extra rounds if there are clarification needed or there's big concerns. So we had that also in the past, that we decided, yes, principle go, but we have concerns on legal aspects. So you first need to clear that before you actually can really use the funds. But this is a little bit of process. So summarizing that long topic. So we have a structured process with methodology to identify ideas and problems. We do then an intensive phase of validation. And in the last step, we basically pitch it in front of the most senior committee in the group to commit for something between 3 to 10 million ticket to start this endeavor.
How many idea at the end go into the final phase per year? One per year, approximately.
So in the final phase, we target 1. But we also had, like, for example, last year we had 0 because idea, we had a good idea. I still think it was a very good idea, but disruptive. So the side remark was on, okay, if we really do this, probably our board members need bodyguards, because you will disrupt industrial machinery business, a part which is very profitable. So we decided not to do it, which is okay. So then we don't do 1, but typically we can only do 1 a year.
Yes, because also the commitment,
effort, funding, spinning out, hiring teams. Yeah. So target is 1.
Talking about 3 to 10 million ticket to be budget, 3 to 10 million for the 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, that's only a 2-year commitment, right? So we have already 4. So what you see already, the more you add, the others, I mean, they also need money, right? Because if they become successful, you need to continue funding them. Yes. And I would say what we can do as a maximum capacity is probably, based of my learning of the year, is probably 5 ideas at any point of time. So if we close something, we can do something new. Or if we get something profitable, let's say this way, transfer it to the business area somewhere. But more than 5 is difficult just from the P&L size of the founding entity.
Yeah, interesting. So that's the process, and I think it substantially is a long process. It takes approximately 1 year to get up to the end. And the good point is you don't need necessarily to have an outcome. I mean, I think one thing that I'm partly worried about most of these venture building attempts, specifically the ones that are coming out from the entrepreneurship program, that at a certain point, if you launch a contest to get the best ideas, and at the end these are the best ideas, so the way there is a sort of implicit commitment to execute. That to me is a total mistake. You should execute what you really is worth of. By the way, you are not even sure that it is going to be a success. So at least you need to be super convinced that what you're executing is worth of trying. But you should not have a mandate to execute something because for the sake of doing something every year.
Exactly. So this is then a lot about incentives. How do you manage your entities and your units? I think there's a lot of things that go wrong. And it's also a lot around, for example, we don't have budget for it, right? So we don't budget it in our P&L budgets. So like ultimately, it's not even that we can, to disincentivize this. We pitch for extra budget. There's budget reserved on a group level, but this is also to not make it as an automatism, because it's very difficult to find ideas that are promising enough and are strategically safe and sound for an established company to make sense to build it there. It's difficult, right? I think the bigger trick is to find really ideas worth doing, and we build already the obvious ones. So the ventures that I described, those were obvious strategic fits. But it becomes every year harder and harder to find something that you have conviction it's worth doing in that setting, at least.
No, I think what you said is super important, super challenging. You say we don't have a budget, we go and ask for an extra budget. That requires, I would say, a very, very open-minded approach at corporate level, and to be able to say we are doing this when it's needed, we found the money. And in the corporate world, not necessarily this is true, because again,
totally.
If you allocate the money, you can use it. If you don't have the money, then you start an internal competition for making space for something like this, and that's required a lot of consensus and a lot of internal struggles.
Yeah, and a lot of conviction of top management, because what you see also in this venture building topic, I think it is potentially the only way I see at the moment to really stay ahead of the curve with innovation, especially bigger, more disruptive topics for established companies, even though it's rather uncommon, I would say, at the moment. And the question I always ask is, like I say, what is the alternative? Because it's expensive, it's pricey. You need to spend a lot of money. It takes time to build scalable companies. I mean, there's a reason why venture fund also need 12 years to an exit very often, because it just takes time to build something of size, even if you're on the winning track and you do everything right. And my argument is always, what is your alternative? If you don't risk the money now, then you need to buy with M&A a winner that is coming out. But at least what we've seen in the past, and I think we will see similar situations in the future again, valuations are so high that you cannot even afford to buy something. Because when look back just 18 months, when valuations for a 100 million business were 5, 6, 7, 8 billion exit values, I mean, this is not really an option for an established, at least if you're not a Fortune 500 company, to buy that. And then the only option you have is build something yourself that has disruption potential. But this also costs money. It doesn't come for free, but it's cheaper than a 5 billion ticket, even if you build a portfolio and you have a standard success probability.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. But the point that most of the time, obvious choices not necessarily have space inside a large corporation. Again, politics is involved, and not necessarily the most obvious choice. Again, innovating obviously has a cost, but substantially it's an investment.
Yeah.
And again, there is some risk for not executing, but also what's the alternative? Again, the alternative is the company might perish, might die, might be extinct. And so that is the real. That is not the risk. That is the way all corporates are headed. Now, the one that try to fight, there are multiple tools to fight it, or do some M&A later on. But again, also the success rate of M&A beyond the price tag is not that obvious. On the other hand, they need to try to do something a bit more earlier. Obviously, it's more risky. So there is a potential.
Yeah, and I think There, I think what you also see, interestingly enough, you see the regional differences. So I think European companies struggle big time with these approaches, especially in a world today where you have big advancements and you need to invest large amounts, basically, with potential high return. Which is easier for the, let's say, big American companies who just have a different culture and also a different business model behind it. So you see this quite a bit in technology. Small companies get bought by huge hyperscalers for ridiculous amount of money, considering the let's say revenue the companies are creating, but they buy them for the technology and the innovation and then scale it out and integrate it. And this is very difficult, both culturally also and economically, for European companies, which personally, as a proud European, worries me because the the past we were very successful in enabling with our technologies manufacturing and life advancement globally, but with the new relevance and increasing relevance of new technologies, I see we losing this position. And this is worrying me, and that's the reason I think your work and the work around how do you really drive future innovation is so key. Even though in difficult times right now, a lot of companies save this money, but this will come at a price which will potentially be very difficult for Europe.
Yeah. So let's go a bit more into some example of venture that you launched. Yeah. I think it might be good to provide a couple of examples and also some learning, because again, each of them probably start at a different stage for addressing different topics, different but partially different genesis, what you have learned and what has been from the learning has been implemented in the next one.
Yeah, so maybe we start a little bit with the order of the ventures that existed, and maybe I come then what was the learning and what did the learning lead to.
Sure.
So we started with FactoryPal, which is a solution connecting to machine equipment in paper tissue manufacturing lines, and basically ingesting machine data and then basically recommending better machine parameters for the operator. And we started building that basically with a lot of conviction, because the value pool is sizable, really big. We have a good influx in the industry, and we had very quick traction. And we fall a little bit in this situation that we thought, okay, if the first couple customers are so quickly signing up for it, let's just hyperscale. Let's just hire more people, and it will just continue like that. And then we ran in this trap, which is called in venture capital premature scaling. And there's actually science behind it and studies showing that if you reach too quick the first million in revenue, the company will run in big trouble. And this happened there. So we had like the first million revenue after 4 months or something in the books. That was super quick. And that basically led us that we were missing some learnings, which was later difficult, led to difficulties in scaling, finding product market fit, and commercial model. So we had then a very heavy funding, burn year, and we really needed to go back, and try to do this learning. So this was a big learning. More resources is not necessarily helpful or better. And if you too quickly are successful, you need to be very careful. What is the reason to understand this? That was a learning there. And what we learned from a product perspective, you need the product had some challenges, very heavy implementation. So you need to do a lot of work in order to lift the value, even the value is sizable. And business model, we thought intuitively is very good. We do just performance-based contracting, meaning we basically get charged, get paid by improvement level. Had a lot of difficulties because it was very difficult to argue and then in the end to fulfill. So a lot of learnings there. Key learning would be if you do premature scaling too quickly too successful, be careful. Don't go faster, which would be the intuition. Start going slower because you probably run into some issues. So this was a key learning there. Second venture.
I think what you just said, because again, I have an example of a different company that have the opposite issue. That again, the typical corporate culture is brings company to go one step at a time. So I think that speeding up investments because you see the opportunity is very difficult to be done in Europe. Again, we're talking about cultural differences because the typical corporate culture is let's wait and see how it goes, and then we will put some additional money on top. I think you did the other way around. Again, you saw the opportunity because again you were scaling rapidly. You started investing a bit ahead of the curve, and at a certain point the curve slowed down, and then you are now it's difficult to manage a company that is heavily burning because it's burning for additional growth that is not coming or not materializing quickly. So that's probably, but I think it was a good cultural attempt to.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a learning.
Quite unconventional.
And I think this is a little bit sometimes what happens when you have a lot of conviction from a corporate setting and you are far away from the professional equity management, so venture capital industry. You don't even realize what you're running into. And so I think this was the conviction to say, okay, we need to spend a lot of money because others are doing this as well. But professional investors basically, let's say this was a little bit more wise to know when it's time to double down and when it's time to wait and see. And I think we were a little bit stuck in this, okay, we now want to be not this corporate guy who is not spending, but in the end, we probably would just start spending half a year too fast, which then in the end led to trouble, which is
just for providing
aspect.
some extra comfort. Typically, also venture capitalists do not know. I saw them; they got excited, overly excited in certain situations, and pushed to do extra investments when they are not due. And sometimes they got scared and they pulled down investment when actually should continue. So typically, one of the principles of managing VC investors in a board is to use the so-called swing approach. You need to avoid they got overexcited on the one end and over depressed on the other end, just to keep them right in the middle. So don't expect it also in the venture capital industry there is so much wisdom. Substantially, it's timing. Timing is so difficult to be predicted. Understand when you.
Yeah, I think the difference is with venture capitalists a little bit. They always think in a portfolio, which in a corporate setting is totally difficult because our portfolio is not large enough, and
you have a small portfolio.
Like,
you fuck one, you are exactly. It's one out
the
of three or four.
Three went bust. Doesn't
and
matter.
They push the pedal down to the end for all of them because at the end they need one or two winners. You cannot afford to do something like that.
And this is very different, I think, like, which is probably a good discussion by itself. Like, what are they doing different and why is it so difficult to do the same thing in corporate world? And that's the reason why it's so difficult to create winners in my eyes, but that's maybe a different discussion. The second one we built is called InspectifA. It's like synthetic Gen AI driven solution around optimizing quality control of vaccinations ultimately. And there we were basically taking some of the learnings. We basically spent much more focus on what is time to value. So how scalable is the product? So how quickly can I deploy, which we found a very smart solution. So FactoryPal deployment is 3 months. InspectifA deployment is more 1 week. So we took some learnings and different approaches. And we didn't scale the team so quickly. So the team stayed just like small for a longer time. And was basically more on product development and trying to product market fit, which worked very well. It's a very good team, much more stable company. I mean, also troubles and difficulties sometimes, like always in these fields, when you want to commercialize highly innovative solutions, but much better. Burn is lower, much more patience. So that was doing much smarter. And also cost, I mean, significantly less cost that we invested to get to the same stage. So that worked very well. And I think the biggest learning was coming then from our third company called Vaibe, which is a classical SaaS product. It's gamification and app-driven gamification for warehouse workers to connect with their warehouse management system. Sold to big e-commerce retailers. So think about all big e-commerce companies who have warehouses, they kind of need this solution. And this is basically connecting to existing systems, warehouse management systems who send these picks. So go to box 1, go to box 2, and they basically put a gamification layer on top of it. And here what we did, I think, took the learning even further. We started building that in Portugal. So it's a purely Portuguese company. So much more capital efficient compared to Berlin. And we basically decided to build this as an add-on product. So here we don't even try to sell it ourselves. We work with value-adding resellers. So being this warehouse management software product companies, we have one in the family, so in the group, or other implementation partners or other systems. So we basically outsource the sales channel by basically approaching the companies who bring the KPIs, which we gamify. So being like picks. We also talk now to cashier systems for stores, in-store sales, and they are basically reselling that. And that is very, very practical because you have like a much broader sales force. You basically partner with other players. And why are they interested in selling it? It differentiates their product. But they basically would not do the gamification layer, but they do, for example, picking system or a cashier system. And then they can offer something to the customer on top. And they anyways have the customers, they anyways have the sales channel. So we basically have like a very cost-effective and broad go-to-market channel with a very attractive capital burn situation. And that one is working very well because it's like a simplified product. It's plug and play. And let's say a more scalable commercialization approach. So this is, I think, the biggest learning that we took there. And it's also the best running company from all KPIs so far, if we backtrack that to the same stage compared to the others.
We question why the choice of Portugal?
Because we decided 3 years ago to set up a hub in Portugal, where we said, like, okay, we need a nearshoring location. At that time, the labor market was super fierce in Germany and in Berlin. And then we did a beauty contest in Europe. So we wanted nearshore. So we wanted Europe. And basically, ultimately, in the end, the decision was between Poland and Portugal. And Portugal, to big surprise, at that time changed a little bit, was the most attractive market with access to talent and value cost ratio. So I didn't have it. I didn't notice either. I was surprised. It was a big surprise for me. But we have it in Porto, and we also hire basically in Lisbon. And that worked quite nicely. In between, it got also a little bit crazy because other people can also do the same math that we can do. But this works actually quite well. It's a good location for us. And we are most likely going to open another location somewhere in Asia. So thinking around Thailand, Vietnam, to be seen next year, just to get even a broader reach and scope.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a very interesting journey, I think, and is a journey actually. I think you're learning.
It's a continuous journey, I would say. You constantly have to
reinvent yourself. You probably again. You average listening to you talking about the story of FactoryPal. When probably you got too much overexcited, and then with InspectifA, you probably have been a bit too much prudent. So substantially,
exactly.
The learning from the one probably the right approach was something being more in between the two of them, and then you compensate it maybe now with Vaibe you find the right formula, or maybe just sometimes it's just time. And it's really difficult to have a sort of full assessment of a tool. Again, we have been running 4 ventures as of today. So again, technically speaking, this is a small lot, and it's difficult to have common learnings.
Yeah, and I think, but there are some common learnings, I think. So
there are common learnings, but I think this common path is difficult. So.
Exactly, some patterns, and maybe just sharing them for people who want to endeavor in a similar topic. So I think one is that you need to be willing to take that it takes time. It does not work in these 12, 18, 36 month cycles. It will take time. And this is basically a 7 to 10 year journey. And when you start, you need to commit to that time, at least in time frame. I mean, the world can change, but this is not a quick fix to make your company a digital leader. I think the second one is you need the right people that have the conviction and the right thinking, which is very different from corporate thinking. And you need to have some people who are also willing to go through this extra pain. So sometimes I say, like, maybe I'm a little bit schizophrenic, because it's hard to do in general to build companies, but then to do it in this setting just makes it harder. Like you need to find those people who are willing to go through this extra effort, because there is a purpose, belief behind this. And I think the third one is really what is very difficult for corporates: hire for potential, not for experience. So we had hard learning. So in the beginning, we hired experienced, quite senior, and that did not work at all. So rather hire for potential, and hire people with who are, let's say, a little bit on the less experienced side, with the right mindset and the right potential to run these companies and set these up. And we see this over and over. So this range 5 to 7 years experience, very committed, very talented, are the best seniors in these portfolio companies to drive this forward. Works much better than people with 20 years experience who basically are still trying to create something big. This is our learning as well, which is very anti-corporate. Corporate is more, let's say, experience, has done it 3 times. And that was also a learning to do this. And I think the last learning is, it's very easy to think that you have unfair advantages, that you have access to customers, you can use all of the infrastructure. This is very difficult. And one of our executives is always saying, just think about your siblings. How much are you willing to give extra to your siblings versus to your friends? It's very difficult, and I call this unfair advantage. Ultimately, you need to unlock unfair advantage, otherwise it doesn't make sense. But it's very, very difficult to live. And we're fighting on this over and over, and this is, I think, I have not found a silver bullet either yet. So the one who will find the silver bullet, how can you really unlock the unfair advantage of the big established companies? They will create equity value through the roof. But this is very difficult, and I tried many ways, but I have not found a silver bullet yet. I think this is the hardest part.
Keep shooting. You will find one. Thank you, Daniel. It's been, as usual, a very, very insightful discussion. And since you are still in the journey, at this point, we will catch up again in a year or so to understand what's new, what the new learning, and what your new ventures that you're about to launch. Thank you.
If somebody wants to chat, just connect to me on LinkedIn. Very happy to share, because
yes, you are very, very responsive on that side. Yes, it's true.
Very looking forward to this. So thank you very much, Alberto, for having me, and looking forward to see you soon.